Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. The Bahamas government not in a position to reduce or remove VAT from fuel cost. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Thursday, 7th April 2022. Details when we return.
Hubbard's Multi-Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies Compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
Welcome back. The government of the Bahamas expresses confidence that the fuel cost will return to its low when world conditions settle down. But as for now, in the early aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, the government is not in a position to reduce or remove value-added tax from the cost of fuel. More in this ZNS News item with Cleopatra Murphy.
As the price of fuel soars, now exceeding $6 at the pump at two fuel suppliers in New Providence, Minister of Economic Affairs Senator the Honorable Michael Halkitis insists there is very little government can do to reduce the cost of filling up for motorists. He claims because the Bahamas imports basically everything, it will be disproportionately impacted by global events, namely the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine that has been driving up the cost of fuel.
That brings to immediacy the fact that we need to be concentrating more on renewables. All right, minus any sort of geopolitical disruption, we can expect to see fuel prices go higher. I mean, approach $200 in the next 20-25 years, just because the cheap sources will be depleted and it becomes more difficult to mine it. And so that even makes it more important what we're doing here today, shifting to renewables.
While Barbados has capped value-added tax on fuel for the next 6 months, Halkitis says there has been a trade-off, as it has also increased taxes in other areas.
I know there was one particular country that is being continually referenced. If you read the entire proposal, you would see, for example, in that country that reduced the VAT on the fuel. They introduced a 15% corporate tax surcharge. They also introduced something called a pandemic levy, which is a surplus tax on individual incomes, and they raised taxes on other forms of energy. So it's not in isolation.
The opposition previously called on the Bahamas to follow Barbados' lead to ease the financial burden of fuel cost on Bahamians, with Prime Minister the Honorable Philip Davis similarly asking in the House of Assembly if Bahamians wanted to pay the resulting taxes. Halkitis contends the public cannot look at the issue in isolation. Because if costs are removed from one area, it has to be placed somewhere else.
We are not unsympathetic, we're very sympathetic, because the nature of our economy is that rising energy prices impact the cost of transportation. We import, most of what we produce, so that means that price impact will be felt through that. The price of gas at the pump for individuals and taxi drivers and bus drivers and all of that.
At the end of the day, the Economic Affairs Minister says everything must be looked at taking into context the country's financial sustainability as it emerges from the COVID-19 pandemic. Cleopatra Murphy, ZNS Network News.
At least one case of child abuse is reported daily in Barbados and one case of sexual abuse per week. This Barbados Today News report tells us more.
At the launch of the island's first Child Abuse Awareness Month, People's Empowerment and Elder Affairs Minister Kurt Humphrey says one case is one too many, and he wants society to do more to crack down on the scourge.
Every number is a case, and that some cases are more than one person. So if I say there were 529 cases, the likelihood is that there are more than 529 persons involved in that case. So there were 529 cases of abuse in 2019, of which 22.8% would have been physical and 21.5% would have been sexual. In 2021, there were 489 cases, of which 23% were physical and 22% would have been sexual. So far, the numbers seem to suggest that in January, there were 41 cases. 12 were physical, 10 sexual, and 18 cases of neglect. I think this neglect trend is something we really have to be mindful of, because neglect will invariably lead to these other things. In February, there were 42 cases, 12 physical, 6 sexual, and 23 cases of neglect. And this doesn't speak well to Barbados. And some people may argue that it is a good thing that the numbers are not increasing, but the fact is that the numbers aren't decreasing either. I think we have to be very mindful of these numbers. They are, in my mind, they're still staggering. I know Child Care Board is doing a lot of work, and it's easy. The government is a very easy target. It is easy to blame the government for everything that is happening in Barbadian society. But the reality is that people live in families, they live in communities, they live in wider societies, and all of us have a responsibility, and all of us have a role to play in reducing these numbers.
Meanwhile, mandatory reporting of child abuse is on the cards for Barbados. Minister Humphrey revealed that government is working closely with UNICEF to ensure all cases can be reported and investigated.
I think we have to be very mindful of these numbers. They are, in my mind, they're still staggering. I know Child Care Board is doing a lot of work, and it's easy. The government is a very easy target. It is easy to blame the government for everything that is happening in Barbadian society. But the reality is that people live in families, they live in communities, they live in wider societies, and all of us have a responsibility, and all of us have a role to play in reducing these numbers.
Meanwhile, top officials of the Child Care Board in Barbados are concerned that a worrying number of adults still live at the Nightingale Children's Home in Blackrock.
The board's deputy chairman, Dr. Carol Jacobs, told Monday's launch of the island's first ever Child Abuse Awareness Month that it's a matter which needs urgent attention.
I have several people in their 30s in the Nightingale Home with children. And that is really a major concern for us at Child Care Board. And there doesn't seem to be anywhere currently where they can go for management and care. So I just wanted to put that on the table.
Minister of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs Kurt Humphrey is equally concerned about the matter, and he made clear Barbados must make better provisions for people with disabilities. He says discussions are ongoing to find a suitable location to address the issue.
We were discussing the possibility of using the facility at Sterling for different things, but to build out a facility to be able to help us accommodate adults with disabilities. So that we wouldn't have the situation that we also found ourselves in when we found two relatively young persons with disabilities living on the street. And, it's regrettable that there is almost a direct relationship in Barbados between a disability and poverty, between a disability and abuse, between some form of disability, whether it be physical or mental, and homelessness. It's staggering. And it is unfortunate. It is not something that we should be proud of. But I think we have to name it, shame it, and fix it,
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
Still on Barbados, some relief is on the way for public service vehicles and taxis requesting of the government of Barbados to shield their businesses from rising fuel costs.
Energy Minister Kerry Simmons says Deputy Prime Minister Santia Bradshaw held talks with key players as recently as last week, and he's optimistic they are nearing a solution.
We had a report on the matter given to us at Cabinet on Thursday. We are in the process of concluding the discussions with the taxi and PSV operators, and we will very shortly form a compact between government and those operators with a view to making sure that there's a commonality of purpose on the way forward. I don't want to get into the specifics of that compact yet, because that really would be a little bit premature. It has to be finally approved by Cabinet. But just sit tight. We're working on it actively.
Over in Guyana, the Speaker of the House there wants the PNCR to fill its vacant seats in Parliament more than 2 months after the leader of the opposition resigned, followed by Nicolette Henry. But former President David Granger is yet to respond to a request for the party's names of the 2 MPs. This Newsroom Guyana report has some details.
Speaker of the National Assembly Manzu Nadir on Monday said he's ready to have the 2 vacancies on the opposition side of the House filled as early as the next sitting of the National Assembly. But that will depend on how quickly the APNU-AFC coalition submits those names to the Speaker. Nadir could not say on Monday when the next sitting of the National Assembly would be, but confirmed that he has written to former President David Granger as the representative of the list, notifying him of the vacancies. Granger has not yet responded, and Nadir has made it clear that regardless of how long it takes, that is not his concern.
As far as I know, and I'm learning that names have already been proposed in the press, but I can't work on the press. So that is the process it is, and I don't know when Parliament will reconvene. If names reach to me before the next sitting of Parliament, those persons will be sworn in.
Nicolette Henry resigned as an APNU-AFC parliamentarian on February 3, 2022, but it took effect on March 31. Meanwhile, Joseph Harmon first resigned as opposition leader on January 26, 2022, under immense pressure to do so, and later as a member of Parliament, with that resignation taking effect on March 15. The newsroom understands that with the 2 vacancies to be filled by the People's National Congress Reform, PNCR, the largest party in the APNU-AFC coalition, 2 names have already been sent to Granger as the persons to fill the vacancies. A usually reliable source said the 2 persons are PNCR leader Aubrey Norton and long-standing member and former Health Minister Waldo Lawrence.
Antigua and Barbuda's Foreign Affairs, Immigration and Trade Minister Chet Green is demanding an apology from the University of Health Sciences in Antigua over claims he barged in on the campus on Sunday without permission.
Upon arriving at the center, I identified myself as a security guard. He was in security boots, obviously I recognized him, he was in uniform. He indicated to me that he was aware of who I am, but he could not allow me in the property unless he had prior permission from a superior. So he proceeded to call someone named Sebastian. I can't say I know who she is. He handed his phone to me to speak with her. I explained who I was, what I was there to do. And she graciously consented to my being given permission to enter. I then handed the phone back to him, that is his phone, mark you, where Mr. Sebastian gave instructions. And upon receipt of those instructions, he opened the gate and allowed me and the others, 3 vehicles, to enter the facility, to enter the property. And so for the life of me, I don't understand how the permission being granted by Mr. Sebastian, executed by him, the employed security officer, that our presence on the property could be seen as forcefully entering or forcibly entering or illegally entering the property. It is just nonsense, and clearly it seeks to do nothing more than political mischief or to cast aspersions and hold someone in public office in an odium. And so I've demanded an apology from Dr. Kennedy for his untruthful utterances or assertions about me entering without permission or forcibly and illegally. And if that is not forthcoming by tomorrow when I open my eyes, I will ask my legal team to look at that and to take necessary action.
Hubbard's Motor Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.